So let me just do a sort of a high level overview of chapter 7 stuff first. All right, so chapter 7, is first of all talking about the asset market. All right, so assets can be non-monetary or monetary, money, right? Monetary, money. So when we talk about the Federal Reserve, it's going to be talking about money, right? So what does that mean? What does money mean? Right? So how do we measure money? Right? So we have these M1, M2, M3. So what does it include? Well, includes currency and coins. That's the stuff that, right? Dollar bills, etc. that we in coins, right?
Yes.
Includes bank deposits. So that's critical. That's really important, right? So bank deposits are part of M1. Demand deposits, checking accounts are part of M1, and savings accounts are included in M2, right? So bank deposits are a critical piece, okay? Why is that? Because that's related to, I'm going to come back to this, but so when we're talking about, whoops, oh, come on. When we're talking about this, we're talking about, well, come on, why is, this wants to switch up on me here. When we're talking about this M1, M2, talking about the money supply. The Federal Reserve controls the money supply. Right? And they do that through monetary policy. All right. So that's this part of the monetary assets. So people can, ultimately the question is, in the asset market, how do people hold their wealth? All right. So wealth is assets minus liabilities, right? Assets are things that have value, right? Come from past savings, could come from inheritance, could come from, right, savings that from non-consuming income, right? And so that can be held either in non-monetary assets. So what are non-monetary assets? Let me ask you all. Let me ask you both.
Stocks and bonds.
Stocks, bonds. What else?
Real estate.
Real estate. Yep. Anything else to that list? Anybody got a collection of sneakers? No. All right. Art.
What is it like arbitrage
Wine
type stuff?
No, well, arbitrage is a verb, not a thing, right? It's when, right? Difference between what price somebody can buy at and sell at, right?
Right.
That's arbitrage, right?
So you buy sneakers low and sell them high.
Yeah. But the sneakers you actually have are an asset. They're worth something, right? They have some value. So the reality is, on this left side, anything that's not money. And money has a very specific definition for us. Money is currency and coins, bank deposits, primarily though. Now it includes other things like certificates of deposit, money market mutual funds, right? M1, M2, right? All those are defined in the chapter, right? Those are very, very specific definitions, and allows Federal Reserve to. And then the question is, how is the money supply related to interest rates? And I'm going to come back to your question, right, in a minute, in just a moment here. But it's useful to have this understanding. So we can break all assets into these two bins: monetary and non-monetary assets. So one of the things, and we don't need to go through it right here, I don't think, but one of the things ultimately in this chapter, right, when we get further into the chapter, after we talk about money in the beginning, toward the beginning of the chapter, and then talk about, you know, non-monetary assets, and why do people how do people hold their wealth, right, and things like risk, return, right, liquidity, how easily can you change it into something you can buy stuff with, right? Right. Those are three big ones: risk, return, and liquidity. Right. The riskier an asset, everything else equal, the less demand for that. You know, so the riskier that. So during times of inflation, money is going to lose value, right? Because it can't buy, a dollar bill can't buy as much stuff when prices are going up at a fast rate. Right. So people might hold less in their bank accounts and more in some other kind of asset. Except, you know, right now, if you put your money in stocks, or not, you know, then that's not necessarily doing great either, because we have both inflation and possibly a slowing economy. Right. So, right. So there's discussion about these sorts of things, plus some others that go into that bucket as well. But those are some of the biggest ones, right? So ultimately, why all this matters is ultimately we can just focus on the market for money. We don't need to do both, because if we find equilibrium in one, we find equilibrium in the other one. That's what sort of the middle, there's a middle 2/3 of the way through the chapter. They're talking about the equilibrium in the asset market and asset money market. And the whole purpose of that little part is to say, where it says demand for non-monetary plus demand for monetary has to equal demand for money and you know, or supply of money and supply of non-monetary assets. And then we can break that apart and say, well, if you find equilibrium in one, you're going to find equilibrium in the other one. Right. So it's a little logical, not a trick, it's a logical thought process that allows us just to, we can say, well, now we can just focus on the market for money. So why is that important? Because the market for money, so this graph is going to be in chapter 9, but it's not actually really focused. It's not focused on in chapter 7, but in the videos that I have, we talk about this, right? So there's a real demand for money, and there's a real money supply. And that determines the real interest rate and the real interest rate and the level of real money. So together, all right, this is the money market. And what does this depend on? Right? Oh, come on. I don't know why it's doing this. Real money demand is a function of the real interest rate, right? As well as GDP, right? Because there are different functions of money. People hold on to money as an asset, and people hold on to money for spending, right? Remember, money is not just paper money, it's bank accounts. And you might say, well, I don't use that. I use a credit card, right? Or I use a credit card, or I use a debit card. Well, a debit card is just a direct link to your bank account, right? Credit card, ultimately, you got to pay that off. So it's still, you got to use money, ultimately, bank accounts, you got to pay it off, your credit card balance, right? So together, these determine the real interest rate. So why is that important? Well, so let's say we know something about, you know, what's happening to the demand for money, real demand for money. Well, the key for us is going to be the fact that the Federal Reserve controls the money supply. So the Federal Reserve can either decrease the money supply or increase the money supply. It controls this part right here, right? So the Federal Reserve does that. By doing that, it can either raise interest rates or it can lower interest rates, right? So you hear a lot about the Federal Reserve these days, right? In the news almost every day. Are they going to raise interest rates? Are they going to lower them? Well, this is how they do it. Or this isn't specifically how they do it, right? But they can do it this way by buying and selling government securities, by setting interest rate on deposits that banks have at the Federal Reserve, right, etc. For our purposes, what's important is they can control the real interest rate. And they can do that essentially by changing the money supply. They have the tools to increase or decrease the money supply by buying or selling government bonds. Okay, so that's how they carry out monetary policy. They change the interest rate. So, in a sense, it doesn't. So, what's happening with money demand? Well, if they know where money demand is, they know where they want the real interest rate. Then they just have to set the money supply accordingly, right? And they monitor this every day, all day, right? They have people doing this and federal economists doing this and people buying and selling on the bond market, right, to do it. So all it matters, and so if you take the money in banking class, right, learn a lot about this. From principles of macroeconomics, we learn about it as well. For our purposes in this class in particular, is that they can the Federal Reserve can increase or decrease the money supply. Right? It's not a question of whether they can or can't. They can, and to hit whatever interest rate target that they're trying to hit. So in chapter 9, the question is going to be, well, what happens when interest rate rises? Well, that has impacts on aggregate demand, and that demand and supply, demand in the economy, right? It's going to slow things down because now it's more costly to borrow, right? Et cetera, et cetera. If they reduce interest rates, then it speeds the economy up. So if you want to slow the economy down to get inflation lower, you're going to raise the interest rate. But we're not there yet. We don't have all those pieces together yet. We will in a couple of weeks. All right? We will in a couple of weeks. So this chapter is really setting up for that, right? So it starts with a discussion about money and how people hold their wealth. How do we measure money? How do we define it, right? And then, and this is all about the money supply, but then what determines how people hold their wealth, right? What that, in other words, right? This ultimately determines the demand for money, right? Do people hold their wealth as money, or do they hold it as non-monetary assets? So, so shifts in the money supply are what causes change, are what cause changes in interest rates. So this is the easiest. This is the easiest part. Oh, this is the easiest part of the course, in a sense. You know, other in chapter 4, chapter 3, like we got labor demand, labor supply, we got savings, investment, we got two curves, and you know, right or left. Well, this is just the money supply, right? The money supply. Or if the price level changes, this can change the real money supply, M over P, but the Federal Reserve can change the money supply accordingly, right, to offset any change in the price if they want, and keep the real money supply constant, right? So big takeaway. So what we learned toward the end of that chapter, though, is right. So in equilibrium, this will be the last piece I do here, and then I'll ask you. I'll turn it over to you for more questions here. But in equilibrium, we know that the money supply equals, right, the price times the real money demand, right? Which is, right, dependent on I plus inflation, the real, sorry, that's not right. Sorry. The nominal interest rate, which is R plus inflation, right? And L stands for liquidity. L just stands, it's not another variable. It's like a function of, right? Liquidity is demand for liquidity, demand for money. Money is the most liquid asset because you can use money to buy goods and services. You can kind of use bank accounts through your debit card, right? But you can't use certificates of deposit. You can't use which are part of M3. You can't use certificates of deposit or money market mutual funds to buy stuff at the grocery store. All right. So money, M1, M2 in particular, are the most liquid, right? So that this L stands for liquidity. All right. So in this case, so what this says is if we increase if money demand, this is money demand, right? This is money demand, right? Then if money demand is not moving around and changing a lot, then increases in the money supply cause changes in the price level, right? What does that mean? Increases in money supply cause inflation, right? So the money supply, growth rate of money, growth rate of inflation are directly tied together. So you'll see in some South American countries, for example, Brazil, it's others in the past, you might have, I don't know, 20% inflation a month, not a year, a month, or 100% inflation, or 200% or 500% inflation in a year. Well, oftentimes that's because the government's spending a lot of money, and the central bank for the country is printing, or the government's printing money, increasing the money supply. That leads to inflation. All right, so the last part of the chapter, last section. So this chapter has kind of got a grab bag of stuff, right? So it's a linkage between money supply and inflation. And we know something about inflation and sorry, that's not what I want to say. Too fast. Right, the real interest rate and the nominal interest rate. All right, or inflation. Maybe I should just say inflation and the nominal interest rate, right? To keep the real interest rate the same, right? So all of this is all that chapter is really about that money market. It's about money and inflation. And it's about the Federal Reserve being able to change the money supply to change real interest rates. The other questions about that chapter? Well, that was a big overview of the whole chapter. If you watch the videos, I don't know if you do, all right? I haven't checked this one, right? If you watch the videos that have introduced the reading videos, the chapter reading overview, right? I go through each chapter and kind of point out in a similar way like this, but I actually use the book, say, here's what's going on in this section of the book, and this is how they all link. This is how it links together. Yeah. So Leon, is that?
Yes, that answers it for me.
Okay. Brittany.
Can we jump to number 1 on the homework for this week?
Yeah.
So let me go back to that paper. Solve for R in each country is first step. I feel like I'm screwing that up, and I
All right, so let me pull, I have it in front of the whiteboard on the screen here, but let me pull it up. You can't see it on my screen, but let me make sure so I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna think about it conceptually, and I'm gonna think about it pragmatically. All right, both of these. All right, so I'm just gonna do. We'll work on one. All right, we'll work on this one. Home country, right? Saving in the home country is equal to 1.0, right? 1 plus 0.5 R, right?
Yes.
And investment in the home country is equal to
6.0 minus R.
minus R. So first of all, if we were graphing this, and we could graph it, right? So what we're going to have is a graph that looks like this. Or we better. or we got some problems. All right, so desired saving. So this is just chapter 4. This is just chapter 4, but now with an extra country. All right, so I don't want to lose that, right? So in this case, let's talk about investment first of all. All right, let's just try to work this through conceptually. All right, if as R goes up, as R gets bigger, what happens to I? Right, subtracting off a bigger and bigger number. All right.
So
if R is 0, we know that I is 6, right?
Okay.
Right, 0, that's 6. If R is 1, this is 5, right?
Yes.
Right, 1, 5. Like we could graph this, like literally.
Yes.
Like we could do it in here, but I'm going to ask you to do it in an Excel spreadsheet. But what we're going to do in an Excel spreadsheet is just doing what we're doing here, what I'm doing manually, right? 2,
Okay.
4. I mean, that's literally the case. All right, so this is 2, and R is 2, I is 4. All right, so what's the point? As R gets bigger, I is getting smaller. That's a downward sloping line, right? We just proved that. We just showed that, right? These are 3 points on that line. Right? We good?
Yes.
So that's just a check, right? Just a double check there. All right. Saving the other way. As R gets bigger, we can see it's plus there. S gets bigger. So as R gets bigger, S gets bigger. Right? So and you can't see a thing because I'm not sharing my screen. Sorry. No, I am sharing. No, I am sharing. No, I am sharing. No, you would have said something to me. No, what's funny is I have the homework in front of the screen. So I actually have a iPad over to the side, but it actually shows on my laptop that it's connected to right now. So I was blocking that whole thing. So, okay, never mind. I had you in mind because last time you said like, we're supposed to see this. Yeah. So no, I was doing it. All right. So where's equilibrium? It's where those lines cross, right?
Yes.
Right. Well, what do the lines crossing mean? It means saving equals investment, right?
Yes.
That's what it means, right? Right? Because at that point, there's the amount of saving, and saving equals investment right there, right? And then there's some real interest rate, right? So we're going to solve for the interest rate. So saving is what? 1 plus 0.5 R. Oops, R equals, right? 6 minus R, right?
Yes.
So this should be giving you confidence, I think. All right.
So
this is going to be 1.5 R equals 5, right? If I can do the math,
yes.
right? Right? And R equals 5 divided by 1.5, right? Yeah?
Yep.
Yes.
Once we have R, put R in there. We know what S and I are. Done.
Okay, so I don't even know You know what? It's fine. Never mind. That we can proceed. I screwed up from the get-go.
And
I
so
had said
my reason for going through this is to point out, like, this stuff, even you might be making it harder than you think, than it should, or than
Yeah.
it should be. And that's oftentimes the case with students. And I, even though I will always tell you, it's not as hard as you think. Not just this, but in general, in the course, right? But people sort of get freaked out a little bit sometimes, and I'm not saying you're freaked out, but they kind of like, wow, this is hard. And they're like, no, it's just not. You just have to think through it for a minute. Like, we could do this in a principles of economics class. Econ 201. This is an Econ 201 kind of question. There's nothing challenging. The challenging part's going to come in a minute. The more challenging part, but it's not challenging either, actually. Right? So it's translating the equations into the so if the graphing helps, is what I'm saying, then what does the graph mean? What does it mean? And how does that mean in terms of the equations then? Right? That's the idea. So, so that would be, so if there was no trade with another country, that was, if the home country was just by itself, then that would be the equilibrium. Like, this is chapter 4. Like, this is a chapter 4 question. Right? And then we could ask, go ahead. Yep.
So I set both savings equal to each other and then solved for R. So that's where I screwed up.
That's what we did here.
No, I set like the home country and the foreign country.
Yeah,
saving
yeah.
equal
So we're
to each
not,
other.
yeah. So, but the first part of the question asks, what would it be in each country? So we got to do this for each country first,
So
right?
that's okay. So I got ahead of myself.
Yeah. We're going to come
Okay.
to that. We're going to come to the part equilibrium in the whole economy in a moment. Okay. But let me,
Okay,
so how do we get, so now I just want to do the Excel part, because you had a question about that last night.
I did.
And I just want to make that really clear. So here's an Excel spreadsheet, right? So here's a spreadsheet, let's say, right? I mean, like, literally, right? Here are the rows. Here's a column, right? So R is one column, and we're going to have saving. And I mean, you can say it in words if you want, right? And desired investment in the home country, right? Well, I should put those in here, I guess. And desired investment, right? So here are the column headings, right? Pretend this is a spreadsheet, right? Am I good?
Yes.
So we got to start somewhere, right? So if you were trying to figure this out, what would you do? You'd say, well, how would I know what the savings is? Well, I need to know R, right? So if R is, I do the same thing I just did here, all right? If R is 0, what is I? If R is 0, what is S? If R is 1, but don't do 0, 1, do 0, 0.1, 0.2, 0.3, 0.4, blah, 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 right? Right? So you just fill it in, literally, just fill that column in. And then say, for this R, what would S be? What would I be? Right? And you use these equations up here to do that. So these become the equations that are here.
So for the spreadsheet, we're just plugging in a new R.
Yeah, you're gonna say, well, okay, let's do it for over a whole bunch of R's. What would saving be? So what I'm doing is, essentially, I am plotting these lines up here. Essentially, that's what I'm doing. I'm not plotting them yet, but I'm say if R was 0, then what is I? 6. If R is 1, right, then it's 5. If it's 2, then it's 4, right?
Yes.
So I'm just picking, but except I'm doing it for a whole bunch of these in between.
Correct.
So I get to make that R column. Like, we just make it. There's nothing to solve for there. The question is, if R is this, then what's S? If R is this, then what's I? And then we're gonna find the place where, so what did we do in the graph? We found where S and I were equal, right?
Yes.
So the question is, what's the R? On the graph, we would say, is it at 0? No, S and I aren't equal there. There's S, there's I, right? And here, it's, S is there, I is here, right? It's only when we get to this number right here, right? Whatever that is, right? 5 divided by 1.5, right? That they're going to be equal. Well, it better be the case that when you get down to, it's going to be 3.33, I guess, right? When you get down far enough down this spreadsheet, right? If we kept this going, right down here, there's going to be 3.3 somewhere down here, right? Right, it's going to be 0.5, 0.6, 0.7, 0.8, 0.9, 1.0, 1.1, 1.2. Now, in Excel, you can create that column with one function called series. Right? You can fill in that whole column. Like all you have to do is you put two numbers in, and you just highlight all this and use the series function, and you can look that up, right? Or fill series, whatever. Let's see. Might bring Excel up on my. So you don't actually have to type all those in.
Right.
So once you do that, then you just put in the equation, right, for S, right, which is what? 1.0 plus 0.5, whatever that cell is, right? A2, right? And then you copy that down. That's going to be 1.0 plus 0.5 A3, this number, right?
Right.
It's just going to, like, literally, once you understand and conceptualize it, so it takes you like 2 minutes, literally.
Okay.
And it's a check. It's a check for your algebra, right? It's a way to check your algebra. It's a way to check this, right? Because you better get the same answer. You better find that in the right here, S and I better be the same, right? So what we're doing on the graph, so for everything below, for every low number, I, right, whatever in this column better be bigger than that one, because that's what it shows here. That's what this graph shows, right? I is 6, S is 1, actually 1, right? Because if I put R in here, it's just 1 plus 0, it's 1, right? So this is going to end up being 6, and that's going to end up being 1, right? And so you can do the difference between S and I. That's this distance right here. For any R, that's this distance right here. So when you're in equilibrium, what's the difference between S and I? Right? In equilibrium, saving equals investment, right?
Yes.
So if S and I are the same, S minus I has got to be what? 0, right? This is the surplus or in this case, or excess demand, surplus or shortage. So
Okay.
doing the spreadsheet is exactly and then using the spreadsheet, what you want to do in Excel is you want to graph that line between those two columns and graph that line, but all in the same graph. So it's an XY graph, right? It's an XY graph. And it better look like this. Oops. It better look like that. If it doesn't look like that, then we got a problem, because so here's the graph, here's the equation, there are the numbers. They all better lead to the same answer. Right? There's just 3 different ways of doing it. But the point of doing it 3 different ways, it'll help really solidify the idea. Right? So
the graph that we're putting in the homework isn't one we draw this week, it's the one we create from the Excel spreadsheet.
yep. That's
Okay.
right. That's right. I mean, we have the actual numbers for this one. It's not a conceptual, it's not a conceptual graph. We have the actual numbers for this one. So this is, now we're just, now we're gonna go to the really the point of chapter 5, and that's the open economy. All right. But we're gonna use the same framing here, same idea. Okay. I'm going to do this conceptually though, first.
Okay.
So, and this is similar to the other questions in the homework, right? So, we've got the home country, we have a foreign country. We're talking about the goods market, right? And I think about this for a second. Well, no, before I draw that, right? So what do we know? We know that this is back from chapter 2, right? We know from the uses of saving identity, we know that national saving equals I plus CA, right? CA is the current account. Current account is our net exports. Exports minus imports. It's our trade surplus or deficit. So we're trading with another country, right? That's how we know we're trading with another country. So if it was just a closed economy, no other countries, CA would be 0. There wouldn't be any current account because there's no trade, there's no imports or exports, right? We're just by ourselves. So what do we know? We know if I bring this to the other side, if I subtract I minus I from both sides, what am I left with? S minus I equals the current account for a country, right? So equilibrium. So in a closed economy, CA is 0. So S minus I equals 0. So S equals I in a closed economy. That's what we learned in chapter 4. Where the lines cross. Equilibrium for the open economy is the current account in one country equals minus the current account in the foreign country. Okay, that's comes out of the chapter, that's got to be the case. So the current account, so if the current account is positive in the home country, that means that, so if the current account is greater than 0, that means that, right, desired saving is greater than desired investment. That means there's a surplus of saving. Well, where does that go? That surplus of saving helps to finance the opposite in the other country, right? So it means that the other country has a trade deficit. Desired saving is less than desired investment, right? Because if it's negative, that means I is bigger than S. We can do it that way too. We can show it that way. Right. So if CA is, well, if CA is less than, because the current account is less than 0, all right, then get rid of that. Then that means that since the current account is, why are we doing this? Means the current account is S minus I. If it's negative, that means that I is bigger than S. So desired investment is desired. And it means that there's more demand for borrowing for capital in that country than there is saving within that country. Right? So there's a deficit of saving. All right. Now, let's draw so if this was the home country by itself, this is desired saving, this is desired investment, real interest rate, INS, right? This is like chapter 4 right now.
Yes.
Then this would be the interest rate in the home country in equilibrium. And I'm just going to put that part in for right now. In the foreign country, we have the same deal, but I'm drawing this graphs in a very specifically, in a specific way, so that the equilibrium over here, the foreign country, is below the one in the, doesn't have to be, but I don't want them to be equal. So in this case, maybe this is 5%. Maybe this is 2%, right? It's a lower number, right? Like we're drawing them, I'm drawing this graphs right next to each other, parallel, right? So where is the real world interest rate? Where is the equilibrium interest rate in the world if both these economies opened up to each other? And the argument is going to be that it's going to be between them. So what we have to do is we have to look. So I'm going to eyeball this, but maybe it's about what we're looking at is this difference right here. So here's I, here's S. It's got to be equal to this difference right here, but the opposite. This is S, and this is I. So in the home country, demand for investment, right, is greater than the amount of saving available in the home country. And that has to be matched by, in the other country, by an excess saving, right? That matches that. Otherwise, the interest rate is going to be different. So can the equilibrium be 5%? No, because in home country, the demand for savings, the demand for investment, borrowed money, right, is it the desired investment is equal to the supply of saving that can be used to as loans for that, right, by banks. But in the other country, there's way more saving than there is investment, right? This is gap. And so there's excess supply over here, and that's going to cause the interest rate to come down. Because overall in the world economy, there's more saving than there is desired investment, right? So equilibrium in the world economy, right, means equilibrium in open economy means this. But another way to think about that is desired saving in the home country plus desired saving in the foreign country equals desired investment in the home country plus, and I'm just repeating actually what's in the book right now, right here, right? So saving equals, so saving in the world equals investment in the world. It's just another way of saying that. But if we bring this to the other side, bring this to the other side, right? Then we come down here, we have desired saving minus desired investment in the home country equals, we have foreign, so we have desired, desired investment in the foreign country. And we bring this to the other side, we're bringing this to that side, minus. So now we have just here's the home, the left side is the home country side, and the right side is the foreign country side. So we know that the current account is saving minus investment. So here's the current account, right? This is the current account in the home country. Has to equal, right? This is minus the current account in the foreign country, right? So it's minus It's minus a minus, it's I minus S, right? So all these things are equivalent ways of talking about equilibrium. So we know that the difference between saving and investment in one country has to be the opposite of the other one in the other country. And that's what we're saying here. That distance right there, difference between saving and investment, has to be equal at that interest rate to the difference between investment and saving in the other country. And if that's not true, we're not in equilibrium. So can the equilibrium interest rate be 2%, right? If I draw this all the way across, 2%. No, because over here, saving and investment are equal, but over here, saving and investment are way different. There's way more investment in the world economy than there is saving if I added them up. There's more demand for borrowing than there is money to lend. And so that's going to drive interest rates up until when? Until these are just equal. So we have to eyeball this. We got to eyeball that place where that happens. So how does this correspond to the question then? Well, all right, we have the home country, all right? We have an equation for saving and an equation for investment, right? The home country, right? We know that we can do that, right? We can figure that out, right? So saving is, what is it? It's, well, let me bring it up on my computer again. Oh no, that's not what I want. So saving, I'm bringing up the homework question, all right? So in the home country, saving is 1 plus 0.5 R, right?
Yes. And we know what our R is.
Well, no, we don't. Not in the world economy. Remember, here's what it was. There's what it was right there. It's not 5%. It's not 5%, but I'm just using that number, right? But that's not going to be our equilibrium for the world economy. We got to figure that out. Well, what's the equilibrium? Saving minus investment, first of all, in the home country. What's investment? Investment is equal to 6 minus R, right?
Yes.
Right? Equals, right? All right. In the foreign country, this is the equilibrium condition up here. All right. This is equilibrium. Is equal to, now what's investment? It's 1 plus R. No, sorry. It's 3.5 minus 0.5 R, right? In the foreign country.
The investment, yes.
Oops, R. Right? Minus saving is 1 plus R, right? In the foreign country, right? From the homework, right? Solve for R. That's all I gotta do. Boom. What is when you solve for R, like the only variable in here is R, right? Like we can figure that we get all the R's on one side, all the numbers on the other side, we solve for R.
And that's the equilibrium value of the world interest rate.
That's this one right there. That's right. Because that's how we got it, right? We figured out whether this difference is equal to that difference. What's the R where that difference is equal to that difference, right? This difference is equal to that difference, right? It's not 5%. In this case, it's not 2%. It's, right? We can eyeball it with the graph like I did, right? Up here. But this equation will tell you exactly what it is. Once we have R, then what? Then we just put it into the equations, right? If this is, right, if this is saving in the home country, this is investment in the home country, this is desired investment in the foreign country, this is desired saving in the foreign country, right? Once we know R, we know what that is, right? We can figure out what that is. Once we know R, we know what that number is. Once we know R, we know what that number is. Once we know R, we know what that number is. What is it showing? It's showing, once we know R, we know that saving is that. That's that number. We know that I is that number in the home country. Once we know R, we know that that's, right? If this is the R, right? We know what investment, we know what saving is in the foreign country. And that's what we're doing. We're picking off these points.
Okay, so is it cool? It's not, it can't be coincidence. That's not how life works. My original equation where I set the two countries, I was right on that. I just had skipped a bunch of steps for the first part. Okay,
If this is what you did, yes. Yes.
okay,
Yes.
so I just skipped straight to the world value equilibrium without breaking it down for home and foreign first,
Right.
which is why I wasn't getting it correct. Okay, that makes me feel better.
Right. Right. So
least I wasn't totally
that is it. I mean, that is part A. That is part A. So I'm not that is, it's not like it's not like it's part D or something or F, but so it does, that is what it asks you to do, right?
Yes.
So I wanted to start with that to say that's how we get it. That's how we get the equilibrium, right? It's not that hard. But now you can oh, I see something here now. So part C, right? I'm looking at something and it really shouldn't say part. Why? So I didn't catch that. I changed this around from a previous version of this, and I still see there's some detritus in here that so when it says part 2A, that should not be there, right? Compare your answers to those you found in part 2A above. It should just be part A above, not 2A above, but so part C on the homework question, why is it between the equilibrium real interest rates of each country in the closed economy case? And it says part 1 above. At one point I did ask people to do both of these, but you have to, in part B, you'll see that when you do the graphs, right? You will do that. And you'll see that the equilibrium real world interest rate is in between what it would be in each country by itself. I just started the discussion here in this example, right? With that, rather than coming back to that. We could have just blasted right into part A there, but what should have been, we could have done that. And then part D, right? Just basically asks you to repeat the process. But now part D says home country's desired saving falls, right? Now you got to figure out how to do that, think about that algebraically, but what it's doing is it is saying, well, what happens if this curve shifts to the left, right? That's a fall. That's a reduction, right? It's measured this way on this axis. So fall is a shift to the left. The question is, what's going to happen to the world interest rate if that happens? So you need to go through this process again, solve it, and find out, oh, it's going to be different, right? Can't be the old equilibrium interest rate anymore. It's going to be different. Okay, so that's part D. It just you're gonna essentially create a new desired saving equation or curve, right? And saving is 1 less at every interest rate. So right? It's 1 plus 0.5 R. Now it's going to be 0.5 R, right? It's one less. So it's having you go through a shift to the left of desired saving and then figuring out, well, what happens in the world economy after that. So what could cause a leftward shift? And this is from chapter 4 now, really. What could cause a desired shift to the left of the national desired saving? Like maybe an increase in the budget deficit. Government spends more money, cuts taxes, bigger budget deficit. And when we get down to question 2, that's going to be related to that. Right. And there's a in question number 2, there is a reference to the application discussion at the end of chapter 5 about twin deficits, budget deficits and trade deficits, and that's related to that. So question 1 is kind of warming you up for that. So what's different here, and this is kind of a lead into what we're going to see in chapter 9, but in a different kind of way, where now we have multiple graphs to deal with, right? Equilibrium means a different thing here than it normally does in any other market that we've seen and that you generally will see in economics. It's not where the lines cross necessarily. Right. So you got to go, this is the equilibrium condition, right? This is what it means in the world economy. And you use that and you just work it through. Right? So equilibrium means world saving equals world desired investment. Saving is what's used to finance investment in capital. That's what this market is about.
Thank you for walking through question 1.
Yeah. And then, so the Excel part of this, right? You need to basically, right? You're going to do this thing, right? With R, right? And you get to fill in all those, you just put all those numbers in first, right? 0, 0.1, 0.2, 0.3, just many rows as you want to do. 100 of them, whatever. And then, right, you're going to figure out, we already did this, right? In the first part, right? For the home country.
Yes.
And then we did this minus I, right? It's just this column minus that one is this, right? Well, that's this, right? And now just do the same thing for the foreign country, right? And for any R, this is say, actually, we want to do this. So what we want to do is we want to do desired investment minus desired saving, right? And now we're going to compare this column and that one, right? Because in equilibrium, they need to be equal, right? So now we're going to look for, when does that one equal that one? What R is the place where these two are equal? That's the same thing as going up to this graph, starting up here, let's say, or starting at 0. That's where we start in the spreadsheet, and going up, and every one at point 1 saying, oh, is S equal to I? At 1, is S equal, or is the difference over here equal to the difference over there? No. And you just keep going up until when? Until you hit this number right here. And you go, that's where it is. Then that's the place where the difference between these two and these two are the same. That's what you're doing down here.
So initially we make two different spreadsheets, one for home, one for foreign. And then at the end here, we're putting them all on one spreadsheet, except
You could do it that way. The way I would think about it is you're in part one, you're creating this part of the spreadsheet right here. And then you're just adding on to it. Like you don't even have to create the R's, is what I'm saying. They're there already. You did it. You know, you don't even have to do that. You just build on to the right, right? You just do this part over here. Just add on.
and then can you explain why? So for home we do the saving minus the investment, but for foreign we do investment minus savings.
All right. So let's go back up here. All right. So the equilibrium condition is that overall saving in the world, home plus foreign saving, is equal to the combination, the sum of home and foreign investment. Okay. So then let's just bring it, here's what we did. All right, here is the process. We said, well, okay, let's get all the home stuff together. Let's take this from this side of the equal sign, subtract it off of both sides. That's the minus right down here, right? That's this part.
Yeah.
And then let's subtract this. Let's get that over to the other side, right? Subtract that off both sides. So now that's minus S plus I, and then we could do it that way. We could do it that way too, right? But it's just sort of easier to see it. I think we just keep everything without extra minuses around. But well, there aren't extra minuses. But if we do it by starting with the positive, so this would be minus. Whoops. Oh, come on. Minus. I just need a bigger screen. Actually, I have a bigger iPad, but I should just use that, I think. But so this would be minus desired plus I D F,
Okay.
right? And then I just move the other side of the plus sign, right? So then it becomes I D minus S, right? So that's why it's that way. Or why it becomes this ID minus F, right?
Okay.
So it's really working through that. So if you work through that, like just this part right here that's showing, just on your own, and just in terms of notes, you don't do that. You don't have to. Well, you have to put that somewhere in the response to the homework, because that indicates that I know why I'm setting up the equations this way, right? Like that's the first step to say, oh, this is the equilibrium condition, therefore this is what I need. And there's, once you have that, it literally is plug and chug. It's just solving the algebra then. It's just solving the algebraic equation. It's also the case that, then now you're going to have two graphs. You're going to have the graph for S and I in the home country, and you're going to have the graph for, whoa. Oops, come on. You're going to have the graph for S and I in the foreign country, and the graph for S and I in the home country. So, and you're going to use the same R column, right? So there are two different graphs from your Excel spreadsheet, one with S and I from the home country, the other one with I and S from the foreign country. And if you put those side by side, then you can actually draw a line across like we did up here and show that.
Okay.
So this is like some other homework questions we had throughout. You see, it starts with a very specific problem, right, where you actually can solve it for the numbers, right? And then the rest of the homework is a conceptual, right, where you're just going to draw these lines, because now we kind of know what's going on, and now I'm going to have to eyeball in that case, I'm going to have to eyeball this, right? Where does R where those two, if I look across, right, where this arrow is right here, kind of like that, and I start down here at 0 and I work my way up, where do those differences between that line, that line, that line, and that line, where are they equal, right, in the two countries?
So Excel is going to spit out our basic graphs. We need to go in and mark it and draw the line and do the things, basically, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, this line right here, you mean?
Yes.
Yes, yes.
And like
So you
drawing
so if you
I
draw,
and S, that line down.
yeah,
and stuff
so
like that.
you can actually do that in Excel too if you have them next to each other. You're gonna add a line, and then you can move the line around. So you can actually, yeah, you can actually eyeball that by moving that line around in Excel, actually, with your cursor, right? You can draw a horizontal line, right? And then just overlay it on top of those two. Or you could print it out and you could actually use a ruler, and you could do it that way too. And then scan it, rescan it. You could do it that way. There are a variety of ways you could do it. But yeah, you've got to put that line in some way. That's right.
You scroll back down just a little bit
This way. Yeah.
to the equilibrium condition right there. Thank you. I just wanted to make sure I had everything written correctly.
Right. And this is in the textbook too. There's nothing different here than what's in the text in that regard. So I'm just repeating what's there, but deriving it, right? So that's one of the things that when you go through a chapter, it's really important to go through and take notes on the side for that sort of thing. At least a second pass through, So this is forcing why this kind of homework question is forcing you to go back into the chapter or to really understand this idea, right? You have to understand the idea of what equilibrium means in the open economy to be able to solve the problem. Once you have that, it's actually straightforward. There's nothing nothing hard about the math involved, let's put it that way. The equations are really simple. So yeah. No calculus, there's no, whatever. So it's extending that what we learn in chapter 4 to 2 economies. And then the notion of equilibrium changes in that case. So let me go back. Let me talk about one other thing here to kind of finish that off. All right. So back in chapter 2, we talked about this earlier, right? We had this uses of saving identity. And if you look at the well, no, actually, I asked you about this in this homework, but it's also if you go look at the questions from past homeworks, you'll see it's there too. There really aren't a lot of questions I'm going to ask. Like this is chapters 4, 5, and 7 on this exam. So think about chapters 4 and 5, or chapters 4 and 5. Now we just have saving and investment, right? And we have this money market in chapter 7, but really the money supply is really the only big game in town there. That's what the Federal Reserve changes the money supply. And so there are only, if you think about shifts and curves, there are only so many. There are, either I shift to the right, I shift to the left, S shifts to the right, S shifts to the left, or the money supply curve is shifting, and that's it. Now the question is, well, what makes those things shift? But no, let me take it back to chapter 2, because I said everything we do in this class is cumulative. It all builds on itself, and that we're going to see things we see at the very start, but later in the course in different ways. The uses of saving, all right. This is private saving plus government saving equal, not plus, equals investment plus the current account. So in chapter 4, we took out the current account. It was just saving equals, so this is saving, national saving equals investment plus the current account. So on the first exam, we said, well, what if there's what if the government budget deficit increases? Are deficits bad for the economy? Right? We could use the uses of saving idea. We say, well, if this goes down, that means the national saving goes down. There's an equal sign here. So that means either that went down or that went down, or both. Well, if investment goes down, that's less capital. So that's going to affect long run growth, the production function ultimately, right? So we had a graph ultimately to show that was a bad thing. Now we can bring the current account. What does this mean? The current account's going down. Means our trade deficit's getting bigger. So for the US, this is already a negative number. This is a negative number. What does that mean? That means, right, current account is net exports, basically, plus net factor payments, but we assume that we're not going to worry about that because they're not that big a deal. Net exports. It's exports minus imports. If this is negative, that means we import, like this is a number like 100 and that's like 80. We import more than we export. All right, that'd be minus 20. So that going down means it's going from minus 20 to minus 40 or whatever, right? It's getting, the trade deficit's getting bigger. Well, so is that a bad thing? Well, maybe, but maybe not. What does it mean? So if our trade deficit, so if the current account's going down, what do we think? One of the things we learned in this chapter is the current account plus the fixed account or the capital account, all right, equal 0. So if that's going down, that means that's going up. Well, what does that measure? That means that those are dollar flows in financial assets. The current account has about goods and services. So if we're buying more goods and services from other countries than they're buying from us, so then our current account is a deficit, and that number is getting bigger, then that's going down. The trade deficit's going down or getting bigger. Yeah, more negative. What does this measure? It means and negative means dollars going out. So in the capital account, right? The balance of payments accounting, right? The beginning of this chapter 5, right? Dollar flows going out are negatives, dollar flows coming in are positives. So dollar flows are coming, like dollars, if we're running a trade deficit, dollars are going out, right? To buy those goods and services from China, Japan, wherever. But they don't want to just hold on to them, right? Generally, those dollars come back to do what? Well, they buy stocks, bonds, they buy government treasury bonds, right? They buy the government's debt, right? That's what this means, right? So if we run a budget deficit, national saving goes down, that may go down. One of these two for sure is going to go down. But if that's going down, then this doesn't have to go down. So foreigners buying our debt help us buy more capital, put more capital in place. Then the question is, what does the government spend its money on? Where's the deficit coming from? Is it building roads and bridges and then selling government treasury bonds on the open market, and the Chinese are buying them? That's what that would mean. Oh, then they're financing our highways. Okay. All right, that's all right. Right. So that can keep investment from going down then. if our trade deficit gets bigger, it means our financial accounts getting going up. It means we're borrowing more from other countries. The question is, if we borrow more from other countries, does that make us worse off? That depends what we spend our money on. So it's the same question. If I asked you, is it bad to borrow money to go is it bad to borrow money to go to college? Depends what you do with it. If you get a degree in a high demand job or high demand in this area, then you're gonna be able to pay off the loan plus be way better off. It's okay. If you don't, if we borrow money and then spend it on consumption, having fun and don't get a degree, well, no, then you're going to be worse off. So, yeah. Same thing for the government. So now, sorry, what I didn't finish off here was that this, we can now we have the theory, right, to be able to show that, like on the homework, that's what we're doing with this open economy model with saving and investment in each country. Now we can show why this uses of same identity has to be true and how it works with the graphs. And the homework questions will help show that. Number one, well, when you do that, when you actually figure out the solutions, you'll be able to see that. You should be able to map that back into this uses of saving identity, and in the sense of the second part of question number one is saying, well, what happens if national saving goes down? And what you're going to find out is both investment and the current account are going to go down, right? Which is what the uses of saving identity would have predicted even before we had any theory. So that was a lot.
Was a lot.
A lot. So I'll post this after we're tonight, later tonight, or the latest tomorrow morning, this recording.
So with our test next Tuesday,
Mhm.
would you be willing to have an office hours on Monday?
Probably.
Okay.
Yeah. Probably.
I'm
That's it.
starting to work through the review questions.
That's a reasonable reasonable request. I would do it at in the evening,
Okay.
like this. Mondays are for us as department chairs is just a really kind of a crazy day. We have certainly starting about 12 o'clock. We have meetings typically all afternoon. Well, almost all afternoon. There's maybe an hour in between, hour and a half in between, but yeah, I would do it that evening.
Yeah, that would be great. My last meeting's at 5 that day, so that's perfect.
So, okay. We're at the end of the time and probably the end of our brain space.
Yes.
So